Over the last week or so, I've been thinking about things that people might need to have a video on and whatnot. And one of those things is, I think for people that are becoming DIYers, that are DIYers, they might have a couple extra questions about is household electric. How does it work? How do you put in an outlet? How do you switch out an outlet? How do you switch out a switch? You know, what are all the steps you need to do to get it to be done? You know, what is that black wire? What's that white wire? Stuff like that. So I'm putting together a video series on my experiences that I've done with electric. Now, I've done a lot of electric. Not saying I am the best electrician in the world. In fact, I'm telling you, I am not an electrician. These are things that I've learned along the ways doing electricity. So big disclaimer, not an electrician, all right? This is for educational purposes only, if you want to understand more about how electricity works. But please, if you're going to do electricity, make sure you check your local codes, check your NEC book, check your city codes, your county codes, whatever you need to do. If you don't feel comfortable doing that kind of stuff, electricity in general, please have somebody else do your electric, like hire somebody in. All right, so enough said. So let's go talk about how a circuit works. So first thing I want to talk about is, this is a wall, right? It's a little tiny wall, but it's only 2 foot tall. Normal walls are anywhere between 8, 9, 10, you know, sky's the limit. You go up to 14 feet. I think these are 10 feet. Another barn, it's, you know, but our house is 9 foot. So every receptacle or switch has what's called a box, okay? Not, you know, outlet box, whatever. Normally, this one here, I usually buy them a little thicker, not the real flimsy ones. You can buy whatever kind you want, doesn't really matter. These are ones for new work. So this here would be nailed into the side. They have a little ledge on them. See these little ledges? These ledges don't make them stick out like this at an angle. This is how far deep they need to go in here. So maybe this is a little easier to see. So you bring it in until it hits that. That's where the drywall goes up to. All right? Believe it or not, the structure, the boxes, everything is revolved around how does the drywall get installed and how does it look, you know, to make it look good. So, outlets, and we're talking outlets are typically only so far off the ground, okay, so far off the bottom of the floor. I was told by a buddy of mine that they told him drop his hammer and then put an outlet on top of it. Now, that's pretty high to me for an outlet. For commercial, I could kind of see it being this high. I typically go around 12 inches off the floor. So you can always measure the rest of your house. I just come up 12 inches and drop it in, and then I'll nail it, okay? Now, we're gonna drop this down a little bit, and we're gonna say, with this being 2 foot, it's 1/4 the height of an 8 foot wall. So if we were going to be a foot off the ground, then we're going to be 6 inches off the ground in here, okay? So that's going to be just a little bit of a ratio. So it's just a tap and a tap. They're there. And a tap. And that's it. Now, that's in there. That's not coming out. It's not moving. You can pull on it. You can push on it. You can tug on it. You can hit it. It's not going to go anywhere. So this is where the outlets are going to go. Now, why are they so low to the ground in a house? All right. The reason is because you're going to take these wires and you're going to bore holes through these studs all the way through. Usually they're all about the same height. You're not going to see wires that come down and they're tacked across here, come back up, come out, you know, and go like that. They're not attached to here. They usually float in a wall. 2 reasons for that. One, they're supported within 16 inches. If you did hang something here or put something here, the likeliness of you hitting the wire and it poking it is pretty slim. It might move out of the way a little bit or whatnot. So, but most people don't hang anything at the bottom of their wall. That's why they're allowed to do this down here. If you're doing something up in this area, we're going to hang a picture. It's recommended you bring it up or you drop it down. Okay, so bring that wire up to the top or drop it down to the bottom and go down the bottom. So that's why that your your outlets are lower. Your switches, we're going to hang a switch box like right about here, right? Same deal, same kind of thing. So your switch box ends up like here, all right? Typically your switches are just coming up, they're getting power, they're going up to the top, they're activating a light. If we had an outlet in here, we had a switch in here, and I wanted to run a light up here at the top. Now, these guys have a little ledge on them, and that goes up. Again, it's all related to drywall. Looks like I lost one of my nails, but this guy will get tapped in. And I promise I will find another nail to put in the other side. And wire would come up to here, go in, and then connect. Now, something unique on lights, and that's these kinds of lights, not any other kind of light. There's no ground on them. You still have your silver and gold, so black gets your gold, silver gets your white, and you still twist your grounds up and you move them along, but that'll go to here. So when we get this wired up, you're going to have electricity coming in. We're going to connect it to the bottom. We're going to connect it to the top, and then that wire is going to go up and connect to this switch, and the black's going to connect, the black's going to connect. Your white wire is just going to get twisted together because there's going to be the wire that's connected here is going to come out of the top and come into this, and then tie in, and we'll put a light bulb in. And when we hook this up to power, we'll be able to flip the switch and the light will come on. All right? Simple as that. A house uses a series parallel type of circuit. So your battery source here would be your main box in your basement. The switch at the top would be a circuit breaker, which could kill the entire circuit. Each switch in the other two branches would be individual circuits, like a light switch going to a light, or a TV or whatever. I want to talk a little bit about circuits before we get too far into this whole process. Circuits start with the circuit breaker on your panel. All right, your circuit panel, your box in your basement or in your house, they have a bunch of these little guys in it. Your breaker box. So this is a normal single pole circuit breaker. They have double pole circuit breakers where they both trigger at the same time. They also have some that are called tandem, which are small like this, but they have two breakers that work independently. All right, they're pretty cool. This circuit breaker of 15 amps, it will pop after you hit 15 amps, somewhere around 15 amps. It's not going to spike up and come right down, but it will pop if it's on there for a little bit. That protects this wire. This is a 14-2 wire. It can hold up to 15 amps of electricity. You're not allowed by code to put more than 80% of that 15 amps on this wire. Okay, so that's 12 amps. These wires will melt, they will catch on fire, and they will burn your house down. So if you have this kind of an outlet, this kind of a wire in your wall, it's got a white sheathing on it, and it's really easy to bend, not like this one. This is a 12 gauge, this is really stiff. All right, we'll get to that in a second. So 14 gauge wire, 15 amps is all you're allowed to put on it. By code, you're only supposed to put up to 12 amps on it because this thing will fry. So don't go downstairs or to your box and take out this 15 amp, put a 20 amp in, and put a 20 amp outlet in with the little T on it. Okay, that's a 20 amp. This is a 15 amp, no T. The reason being, a piece of electronic equipment, a drill press, whatever it is, they draw current in. Okay, it's not that there's all this current out there and it's just being fed across these wires to all your devices. It doesn't work like that. You have an electronic device that says it needs a half an amp. It will pull a half an amp down this wire to that electronic device, and that electronic device will start functioning. All right. If you have something that's pulling 20 amps or 16 amps or 18 amps, and you switch out this 15 amp breaker, the breaker's not going to pop, this wire is going to burn. So be very cautious about that. That's pretty much for anything you're doing on a new build, or, you know, existing if you're trying to switch this out. This wire is a 12 gauge wire. It's a lovely wire. It can take up to 20 amps, a 20 amp breaker. So a breaker that looks like this, but instead of 15, it says 20 on it, all right? However, code says you can only load it up to 80%, so that's 16 amps, all right? So keep that in mind. Everything else still applies. You could use this wire with 15 amp outlets, all right? Now, I'm not going to get into the reasons why you want to do all that, but this wire is a little more expensive, so just be careful about, you know, how much money you're planning on spending. Now, when we get to other circuits, which we'll get to later, I'll tell you more about the dual breakers, okay, the dual poles. But for now, let's just keep on moving. For now, I've got some old boxes laying around here. I'm going to take all this stuff apart, and then I'm going to have some 14 gauge wire. Notice how easy that stuff bends. And we'll start getting this here hooked up. So let me get these apart. Okay, now that that's all taken apart, I've got some wire. So everything that you're going to need for this today will be an outlet, a clean one. It's a 15 amp outlet. It's a 15 amp switch. Okay, yeah, they're different colors, but it is what I have. Then you're going to need a light bulb container. You're going to need a cover for the outlet and a cover for the switch. Otherwise, we're not, you know, playing safe, guys. All right, let me get this cleaned off. All right. So wire comes like this. All right, comes rolled up, bigger roll than this, but this is just a little bit. This here is white. Now, today you can kind of assume it's 14 gauge, but it's better to look at the wire, which I'm looking for right now, and you're going to see something like this. It says 14.2 here, I think. Yeah, 14.2. You're going to see something in here says type is NM-B. You're looking for wire like this, all right? So when it says the 14.2, that means there's two wires in here and they're 14 gauge wires. 14 gauge means 15 amps, okay? That's why all this other stuff here is 15 amps. So what that means is I can put up to 80% of 15 amps along this wire. All right, so 80% of 15, quick math, boom, is 12 amps. That's all you're allowed putting on this. All right, now what's that prevent? That prevents you from burning your house down. Just gonna say it. What do you do with it? I need to get this into this box. Now a box, and these are a little dirty, but a box has these little pieces of plastic in the back, and what you want to do is you want to turn them up like this. And how do you get them to turn them up? You take a screwdriver, and from the inside or outside, doesn't really matter, you kind of just tap it a little bit like that, and then they'll turn. And then just turn your screwdriver as if you're turning it like this, and it will turn out. Don't try to pry it over or you'll break the little tabs. You don't want the tabs to break. All right? The reason for that is these are going to hold your wire in place. This is one version. There's another version that has a spring kind of clip on it. I'm not a big fan of those because you push them down, you break them free, and then they hold on to your wire. The reason I don't like them is if you ever need to pull them out and pull the wires out, you're never going to get that wire out unless you're really prying, and eventually you break it off and then your box is worthless. I don't have any of those around here, so I can't show you one. Now, so how do you get this wire into the box? You can either go from the bottom, because we're going to have a wire that's coming down here. I'm going to show you how to hook it up to an outlet so you can plug it into a wall so we can actually test this all out. You can start from here and work your way down, or you can start from here and work your way up. It doesn't really matter, all right? So, let's start from to here, you can go to here. Now, you need some wire hanging out of this, all right? You don't need 8 feet. You don't need, 6 inches. That's all you're gonna need. I got dirt on me. All right, so I'm gonna scoot this in a little bit so you guys can see this. Okay, so we're gonna come through the top. I'm gonna push this wire a little bit, this little opening back here. It's like I showed you before. And that gets open. Now, you need a little bit of wire coming out. So I usually take this, a wire, and I hold it on the back and I look about, I don't know, that long. How long is that? From the front of the box, I'd say maybe 4 inches is what you need. Okay? So the back of the box is back here, so I'm going to put a little bend in it. And we need to get rid of this white sheath. Okay? That needs to get off of there. So one tool that I forgot to tell you needed, and that is a knife. A utility knife to be exact. Okay? It doesn't have to be, anything great. So you're going to measure this again. It's going to be about 4 inches. Just to say, about 4 inches. This is where the back of it is. And then you're going to come forward about 1 inch. You're just going to take this at an angle like this and just kind of press into it. Just to leave a little bit of a break. And you're going to do the same thing, exact same thing on the other side. Just to give a little bit of a break. You're going to twist it back and forth a couple times and pull. See it coming apart? The more you twist and bend, that little piece of plastic will snap. Now you could pull this off of here, but if you do, it's going to be a pain in the butt to get it through this hole. So leave the sheath in and then pass it until that hole, that crack is past the little holes in the back, and then pull the sheath off and snap this piece of paper off. Now you've got one set of wires in a box, and that's pretty good. All right, and we're just going to leave them there for right now. So most times the electricians are doing this, they'll just take these wires and they'll just kind of roll them up in there, and they'll wait for drywall to come and they'll get everything drywalled. Now, I'm not going to tack this to the wall, but you should tack this to the wall within, I would say, about 4 inches. But now we're going to go up to the next one. So we're going to move this up to here, like that, and we're going to do the same thing. So where's that wire coming to? It's going to come out the back, and you're going to hang out about 4 inches. So that's about 4 inches. And then we're going to take a pair of pliers, and we're just going to cut that off. Just like that. Don't worry, we're still doing good. So we know where that wire needs to be in the back here. So I'm going to come down about the same amount. And I'm going to put a little bit of a slice in there. And I'm not trying to cut the wires that are inside. I'm just trying to cut the sheeting. And that's now loose. So now we're going to take the bottom side of this one. I'm going to stick a screwdriver through there. See, now I broke the tab. That's just my bad. And that's okay, it's not a big deal. So you can stick this back in here now like that. And now you can pull that sheeting off. And snap that off. Now, the reason that you would tack this down with some sort of a clamp, with a nail, which I'm going to tack it down here in a minute because I broke the tab off, that's to keep that from falling out of this box. So we're going to spread these wide. And I'm going to grab a quick nail for this. So there's a variety of different types of nails for these things. There's some that look like this, and there's some that look like this. All right, I don't know if you can see that. I like using these nails better than these. You'll see me use these in the videos and stuff, but I do like these other nails because they don't bend as much. So we can just tap that in there like this. do not want it breaking the wire. You do not want it pressing on the wire. See, now that wire is not going to come out of there. That's why that needs to be reinforced. And again, you can fold that one up and put it in also. Okay? And this is primarily exactly what someone that was be doing electricity on your house. So let's back this up now and raise this up. But right now, we need to get a wire that sticks out about 4 inches from the back. We need to put this in. I'm going to cut this like this. Break it free a little bit. Make sure that's open. Like that. Stick this in through here. Pull the sheath off. Snap that off of there. Again, this is the wire for the top, and we're just going to roll that into the box also, and then we're going to tack this right here. Just like that. Well, probably a little tighter. Need it to be a little tight. So about that point here is where we're going to drill a hole up through the top. This is called a speed bore. All right. You could use any kind of drill bit you want. But this is a speed bore. This will take up to a 1/2 inch. So it'll take this wire in no problem. You could put 3/4 in. You could put 1/2 inch in. If you're running 2 wires, I would put 3/4 in. If you're running 1 wire, you might want to put 3/4 if you ever think you're going to run another wire through there. But for us, we know we're never going to, so that's why they call it a speed bore, because it gets through that wood really quick. Now we need a wire to come up through that, come back through the back of this and hang down a little bit. So we need about, again, that much wire hanging down. So we're going to cut that. And we're going to stick this through here. And you want to try to get this wire to lay pretty flat like this. You don't want anything hanging out. There's none of these little press downs. I guess I do have a press down. So there's no press downs in the back, like in the back of this. They're only on the sides and on this side. So we're going to trim this off here right about there. Same thing we've been doing everywhere else. You're going to rock that back and forth, and you're going to loosen it. And then we're going to stick it down in the hole. And you can hear this. I don't know if you can hear this, but you heard the click. Yeah, there you go. And then you can pull this off. That's a lot of wire hanging down here, but it's okay. So this would be up in your ceiling of your house. All right. Now, if they were doing work on your house, like I said, they would tighten this all this, they would mud this. This would be caked with mud by the time the electrician got back to doing it. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume that everything's been done. And we need a light. We need to put this guy in. Okay, 14 gauge wire. Remember the 12 gauge wire was really hard to bend, right? So 14 gauge wire. You look at these little tools here. Let me flip this over so I can see this. One of these guys says 14. It's that one right there. Okay, the one below it's 12 because it's bigger. Than there's 10 gauge. So they go 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 on up. Okay, so you take the 14 and you put it in here, and you're only going to take off about a 1/2 inch. You don't really need much more than that. So just kind of put that on there like that and trim it off. So they're about the same. Now, black goes on gold, and you can either use the fixture to drop this in like this to put a light bulb in. But what I like to do is I like to take my needle nose and I'll put them someplace in like this, and then I'll kind of bend that a little bit and then bend it a little more and make just a hook. And the same thing on here. You bend a little bit and bend a little bit and bend a little more. Makes a little hook. This way you can just hook the black on there onto the gold, and then take and pinch those two across. Now you can take your Phillips head, tighten that down like that. And then on the silver, you do the same thing. And you take this and you tighten it down like that. Okay, now, there's no place to put the ground wire. Alright? So, what you do with the ground wire for this situation is you roll this thing up as tight as you can get it and try to put it as far up in there as you can, way up in there. These guys here, you just kind of twist around like this, and you use those to keep that ground wire away from everything. Now this has got to get screwed on here, so I gotta get some screws for this. I'm just going to grab some regular old screws here and put that in like this. Just a little bit of a tight, and then put one in the other side over here. If I can find a hole, it'd be great. Okay. So these guys can get in, and you kind of twist them a little bit counterclockwise. Then you need a drill bit. You can do this with your screwdriver, but like I said, and either way, you just want to barely put them in. You don't really want them in super tight. You want them in tight enough so they don't fall out, but you don't need them super tight. So I usually spin them in a little bit with the screw gun, and then I'll tighten them up some more with the screwdriver. Okay, so that's okay. I got to get a light bulb for this, but now, so that's the light being hooked up. Now, typically if you're coming to a box, you're kind of coming to this box here just as if it was a box that was being worked on, or a box that you're looking at. This is what you're going to see when you replace a light switch. Alright? You're going to see a bunch of wires coming out. You're not going to know what is what, where it goes, how it gets there. So if your electrician did a right job, you're going to notice that the wires on the bottom are probably for your power, and the wires on the top are probably for your light source. Okay? Or going to your fan in your room, or whatnot. Sometimes they both can be coming from the bottom. If that's the case, the only way to test them to make sure is to turn your circuit back on and actually test the leads. That is where this thing can come in. This guy here. Alright? So if we get these wires stripped here, 14, remember 14 gauge wire. So once you get your wires stripped to, this measurement in the back here, grab your needle nose pliers and make your little loop like this on each of your black wires. Take your light switch that says off and point it so you can see the word off, and put your power going to the bottom of it, to the bottom side. And then tighten that down. Really good. Take the one that's going to the light source, put it on the top, and then tighten that down. Now, you never want to do this with the white wire, because that's your grounding wire. It holds your load, and those need to continue down. It's your neutrals, okay? Now, so let's get these guys stripped. 14 gauge wire, I think. About a 1/2 inch. Now, these two we need to braid together. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of people just throw these things together, throw a screw on there and go, oh, we're done, we're great, this is automatically braiding, right? Well, that's true. It might braid it a little bit. Okay? But the right way to do this is to take these two wires and cross them like that. Make a cross with them, some sort of a, just cross them over. Then pinch them with your journeyman and keep rolling them until they're braided nice and good. Now some people will trim off the end of it. I don't really do that. I just kind of keep on moving my journeyman pliers out to the end. Then I grab a nut and spin that on. Now why do I do this? The reason is because if you ever work with an electrician, they're going to tell you to do this if they're worth their weight in as an electrician. Hands down. Because now they know that when they take this cap off, that thing's tight. They don't need to worry about the wires vibrating and that cap falling off or anything. Same deal going with this. So we need to put a, since we have two single wires, there's two different sizes of these. Actually looks like I've only got one size. Okay, so since there's only two wires here, well, it doesn't matter, there could be 6 wires, but you need to get them all into one of these, inside of one of these crimps. Now, your journeyman pliers have this little indentation here that are actually made for that crimp. If you put that thing in like this, into that hole, then you can crimp that down. Squeeze it tight, move it over a little bit, squeeze it again. You're going to end up with a little divot like that. That thing's not coming apart ever. At this point in time is when you can start twisting these guys up. Now some people will say, no, don't twist these up until these are crimped. This prevents this braid from going all the way to the back. And this is the way I was taught to do it. So, see the braid forming? Now you can take this one part of the braid and just fold it back in, or you can cut it off or do whatever you want. The other one, you need to make that hoop and then hook it onto this green wire, this green nut down here, and tighten that down. Now, the beauty thing about some of these, which I'm just noticing on this one, I didn't see that it had it. Let me just kind of open that back up. They have a little tiny hole here. I don't know if you can see the hole, but you can put the wire into that hole and then actually bend that around the nut. And that works just fine too. And then you can tighten that down. Now, why do we have a ground and a neutral? When back in, the 70s and the 60s, this is why you need a bigger screwdriver for this. Because if you don't have one, you start tearing up the screw. So this one here will span the entire nut. Back in the 60s and 70s, we didn't have a third wire. And remember, when you looked at the edge of this wire that I got laying down here, it did say 14.2. Okay? But there's 3 wires in there. So the 14.2 has always been the code, and now they added this grounding wire. This grounding wire goes all the way back to your main panel, and then there's a 6 gauge wire or an 8 gauge wire that goes out to a bar that's about 10 to 15 feet tall that's pounded down into the ground. Literally grounding your house. So in case your house gets with electricity or a lightning and there's a big electrical surge in your house, it'll get down into the ground and go out. A lot of old houses you go into, you touch a light switch and you turn it on, you get a little shock from it. 99% chance they don't have a ground, well, they do have a ground issue, but they might not have a grounding wire on it. So let's kind of wrap this thing up here. Try to keep that ground off of all of your screws. And then you put this back in here and you push it in. Now, you don't want it to be, you don't want these screws to be holding this in as tight as it can be. You want them to come in easily. And then the screws just hold it in place. Now, if you had drywall here and you needed to set this, you could take these tabs, which not a lot of people know about this, but you can take these tabs here and you can bend them down like that. okay? And then when you tighten up that screw, it won't go as far back into the box. Now that's the way that I've been taught to do this over the years. They also have things like this. They're little green locks that you can cut off, break off, and they fold up, and you can put them into the screw. You can, you know, break one of these guys off, you put this in like that, and then you can put this behind the screw and keep it from getting so tight on the box for your drywall. Now, again, you can do it any way you want. I'm not saying any way's any better than the other. So, like I said, you can pop that in there and it will work. For us right now, we don't need either one of them, because we're just going to be flat. Now, but I just want to show you guys options. So, outlet, poke a hole in it for the cover. Got that guy on top there. And take a screwdriver. I usually buy the unbreakable, what are these things called? Yeah, they're called unbreakable. They're a little more flexible than a normal outlet cover or light switch cover. So look at that, we got a light switch. So we need a light bulb. So now we need an outlet, or at least we need to hook this to power, right? But let's put an outlet in here so you can see how an outlet's put in. Alright, so we're going to put a 15 amp outlet in. Actually, before we put this in, let me run some power into this so that you can actually see how this is done. So we got the same kind of deal. You got wires coming up, about 4 inches hanging out. So right about here. Need to cut a little bit of wire. I'll move this down some like this so you can see. Make sure you break that back and forth. If it doesn't break completely, you can always take the knife and break it. So now that they're apart, we're going to run this one up through the bottom of here. Ooh. Like that. Pull the sheath off. Pull the little insulation off. And this would be the power. So here's the outlet that's going to go in. Remember, black goes to gold, white goes to silver. You want to keep that structure throughout your entire circuit. So otherwise you're not going to be completing your circuit. If you remember what a basic circuit does, you don't want them going from black, on gold to black on silver. Like having the black continuous here and having the white on, on the actual outlet, and vice versa. If they get all mixed up through here, you're going to have problems with your electricity, being that it's just not going to work. All right. So the way an outlet is, you can either wrap them around the outside, or there's little slots in the back here that you can use. All right. So for this one here, you can put 1, 2, 3, 4 wires into there. Now, why would you do that? Well, I'm going to show you. We're going to take one set of screws, and I'm just going to tighten the bottom of that down, and I'm going to tighten the bottom of this down. Like that. And then we're going to strip the black side, 14, about a 1/2 inch off, 14, about a 1/2 inch off, and the same with the white, 14, get them. Always, whenever you're doing things like this, it's better to keep them into like an assembly line kind of deal. Like, did you get your stuff stripped? Yes. Did you get your wires put together? Yes. Did you get your grounds hooked together, yes. Now, something I'm going to tell you, when you're dealing with this many wires, it's easier to take a crimp and get this stuff out of the way as fast as you can. So remember that crimp, you can't put it way far back in the box. So we're just going to crimp this guy real quick while everything's out of our way. If I can just get this on here, it'd be great. There we go. So get that crimp. Now let's start twisting this up. Get you a nice looking braid there. Like I said, bend that wire back and we can get this hooked on using, bend these hoop with this now. Because this one does not have a little hole in it. It's got a little nubby there, but doesn't really work great. Put that on so when we tighten it, it's going to tighten clockwise and pull that wire around. Alright, so that's good. Now, for these wires, doesn't really matter where they go as long as the black are on the gold. So these you just kind of stick in these holes in the back here, okay? Like that. And then you can tighten down one screw. Otherwise, you need to put on this with what's called a pigtail. If you had more than 2 wires. And what that would do is you would take these 2 wires and twist them into a tail, braid them together, braid something else onto it, and then you would hook it on. Like that. Not a huge fan of that. So whenever you don't have to do that, don't. So the other side we get put in here like this. I'm going to use a drill for this because sometimes holding these wires in takes more than 2 hands. And it's easier just to get them pinched off where you need it to be and then just tighten it down. Okay, so that's all hooked up. So now let's get this in here. Now, I like to put my ground plug on the bottom. My father-in-law, he used to put them upwards. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the way he was taught, but do them however you like to do them. If your house is down, I'd recommend putting them all down. If your house is up, then put them all up. I don't know. Maybe it's just it looks more to me like, someone's eyes in a mouth or something. I don't know. Alright, so that's all clean. Now we need a plate cover for it. Okay. So I'm not going to drill any holes into this or whatnot. I'm just going to take this side now and we're going to hook it up to a plug. So, found a plug. It's a regular old plug. This one here is unique because it comes apart. And again, you see there's a silver screw, there's a gold screw, and there's a green screw. Same as everything else in electricity. It's all really neat the way it all works together. So, for this, we're going to need, I don't know, first thing we need to do is slide that down on here because we don't want to lose it. So let's take about that much. And we're going to put a little hook in there and a little hook in there. I'm going to pull that off of this one. Like that. And we're going to maybe I don't know about that much, 1/4 inch, and maybe a 1/4 inch over here. Because this is not like the outlet. These all have to get behind. See, they don't go in that far, and you don't want to have any ability to touch. So just going to use a screw gun just to snug them up. The reason I'm saying snugging, because they are going to get tightened with a screwdriver here in a second. Let's get that one snugged. Pull this through the other side. And we're going to put that one on and snug it up too. Now, remember the big screwdriver. Big screwdriver to cover all the way across the nut. Or screw, nut, whatever. I want that tight. Then we're going to go to the next one. I'm going to tighten that one up. If I can get it on the screw, it'd be great. There we go. Now I need to get the black, which is on the other side. Make sure that one's tight. And you usually get about a 1/4 turn on there. Now you just got to get the holes kind of lined up, and I think this is the way to go. There we go. All good. Now, all we need now is an outlet. Well, that's not going to work, is it? Go find some extension cord and a light bulb. So we're going to plug this into an outlet, extension cord, and then we're going to check. We got electricity. They're both amber, so it's good. Both amber, it's good. And we got light. So not that real difficult to do. Took us about 20 minutes or so. But this is how it's done. So there's your light. If you like electricity 101 for your house, if you ever want to install something, it's not that hard. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, please don't do it. But I think everybody should know how to do this and at least have a reference guide for it. So if you like the video, please click like, subscribe to the channel, and if you like videos like this, please click the alert button so that you get to see them more. I'm going to do a pretty decent series on some more electrical stuff for this. Thanks for watching.